Okay, so my name is Albert Johnson. I go by Vyle. And I'm just going to go through who I am and what my project is. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm an artist, musician, and vocalist that was born and raised on the south side of Chicago. My building had the father of the producer, No ID, who is a producer for artists like Beyonce, Jay-Z, and all that. He was someone I kind of grew up around. My stoop was where Common celebrated the first signing of his album to a major label, and I kind of grew up in a version of Chicago that, although fostered great art, was also somewhat of a dangerous place. Like it says here, children were abducted. There were many, many things happening, and if you weren't paying attention, you could very well be kind of enveloped in this gang-banging framework that the city had. So after being advised to kind of get into music, after the first time I just offhand kind of freestyled, I started recording my first pieces of music, which received press, and then worked with underground artists at the time, such as the Nacrobats, Robust, Aesop Rock, Illogic, and I Know Stum. Next slide, please. In the years since, I found myself included in scenes that kind of blended dance music and hip-hop music. The scene was called Blog House. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with that back in the day, but I started with other friends from Chicago, a group called Flostradamus. From there, I collaborated with artists that were in other countries and not just like local artists, so people from France, like my friend Uffy, Danger, Busy P, and also larger artists like Rick Ross. Shared stages in places like Lollapalooza and Pitchfork Festival, and been featured on press and TV and all that. But just as I was getting ready to release my first project, I lost my mother. She had passed due to cancer, and she was like, obviously your mother is going to be the first beacon of a person that says, yes, you should do these things, you shouldn't do these things. So needless to say, I was shattered, kind of going through a very nomadic Dharma bum period of my life. Next slide, please. So migrating and moving around, I made my way to New York City and was working for a few, or producing for a few acts. At night, I worked as a DJ in venues that kind of pulled me into how I got here now. While DJing and collaborating with artists in that circle, as I was saying, I started to absorb that visual language and the kind of codes of that environment, and those were kind of feelings that weren't often focal in rap music. And a lot of the things I was doing, it was aligning with my roots in Chicago, also aligning with the design in Chicago. The building I grew up in was inspired by Mies van der Rohe, and I spent a lot of my youth, I used to skate, and I feel that to even be a skater is actually to have a love of architecture, because you have to look at the space and go, oh, this is actually skatable. So those sorts of things kind of started my love for design. Next slide, please, Joe. After a chance meeting with staff from the New Museum at a place called Spring Studios, I learned about their cultural incubator, New Ink, and was accepted on an idea that turned into this current project, Automotor. Over time, I kind of, honed my skills in 3D and WebGL, AR, VR, and this project was born out of the idea of a visual album. You had artists like Michael Jackson, who created a ton of visuals for his projects, things of that nature, Beyonce's Lemonade, but I felt that creating just a project that was video-based was not, it was enough, but I wanted to kind of do more. So, that kind of brings me to today. Next slide, please, Chip. Where we talk about Automotor. Okay, what is Automotor? Next slide, please. So Automotor is a visual album, but it's made in a very specific way with photorealistic, interactive 3D environments that are presented as immersive websites. And the project was created after a member of our team said what exactly I needed was kind of out of her wheelhouse. So I kind of took up web development and VFX as we were in the incubator. And yeah, they include collaborations with a lot of great artists, friends of mine like Timothy Sacenti, Jeanette Hayes, Terrence Bias, and a ton of others. Next slide, please. So on this project, it's kind of an archive of my life. So you start in the year 2007 and get to the present day, moving through many different spaces within my life and spaces in Chicago. I produce most of the tracks myself, and I have a few friends that also did some guest production on the project. My friends Brodinski, Pete Morris, Mediocre, and some others, and there are vocal contributions by friends like Fat Tony, Halik Mall, Beans from Antipop Consortium, Cities of Eve, Techie Latex, and many more. Next slide, please. And that's Automotor, and we're going to go through a quick run through of the project now. So the main menu of this project is presented to mimic a website, an underground hip hop website that was called Sandbox Automatic, which was a place to kind of order music. But let's start at the beginning. Okay, so starting here, we are starting in 2007, as I said, and you kind of start the project when I kind of found out about what was going on with my mother, and kind of you kind of start this journey. So you wake up in my childhood room. Bring the music down. We begin in my childhood room, and yeah, we're gonna talk about some of the things in here. So while maneuvering through the environment, there are different icons where you can see the different information and the different objects throughout the room. As we see here, and as of things in the time, we have a PlayStation 2, many different artifacts that were just things that I grew up with and grew up around, and a lot of subcultural signifiers. So as we move through the room, we can interact with the computer, which is highlighting a website different websites that were very integral to underground hip hop and the quote unquote indie sleaze scene at the time. You also, when clicking around these different objects, you can delve into different historical aspects of the project, whereas this link talks about a group called Dem Dare, which is a group that, as we can see, they've influenced a ton of people and worked with people like Common, the Gorillaz, influenced Kanye West and a lot of aesthetic styles like wearing polo and things of that nature. But from here, we're going to delve into a different environment. So as the user, you move throughout Chicago, but then you also move through a couple of different places. But this environment right here focuses on the south side of Chicago. And while you're going through this story, you're also able to be in environments and see spaces that now are torn down or are not like available to the public because they've been turned into condominiums or whatever the issue or point of it was. But as we can see, we have these different interactive objects that you can interact with in many different ways. When we come here, every environment has info where you can see how you are to interact with the page. And there's also narrative information explaining the story of Automotor and explaining what basically has happened in my life. From here, we'll go into another environment. As I said, the story takes you start in Chicago, but you also go to a few different cities. So as with this one, we start in Chicago, but then we end up in Spoleto, Italy, which was a place where I also worked on the project, and we created some songs out there. And also I was very inspired by like the architecture out there. So as we can see here, this is the environment for a song called No One Wrote This Out For Us, which kind of just brings you into this space. You're able to interact with the objects in the environment. And from here, you're able to kind of go wherever you like. As you can see, we have arrows on the left and right, which take the user to the next environment. Maybe not because of this pop-up, but we'll also talk about this environment, which is very important. So this other space, this other space is not going to load right now, but when you're using it, it's just it was just showing an environment in New York. Yeah, it doesn't seem like they want to load right now for some reason. But yes, I'm sorry. That was Automotor. I'm not sure why they weren't loading on here. Okay, neither does Chip.
I'll check it.
Okay. But yeah, that's basically like the project. It's a way of kind of placing yourself, not just in my shoes, but also placing yourself in the experience of a person that was born and raised on the south side of Chicago, and kind of shows you the interconnected like points that bring different cultures together. So as being someone from the south side of Chicago, music like gospel was created in Chicago. Music like house was created in Chicago. So it's definitely talking about those points and parts of my life that also fit in with that history. Thank you, I appreciate it. I appreciate y'all working with the technical difficulty.
Thank you very much for that indeed. It's really an incredible project. On the board over there,
Yeah.
it says 71 minutes is the duration of the piece. I'm taking, is that of this experience or of the album?
That's the album itself. So basically, if you were to go through every environment and play each song, it would, total to those amount of minutes.
Wow, within this?
Yes.
See, when I come into this, it makes me think there's about 3 days worth of experience in there. which is amazing.
Yeah.
And just finding the kind of way you teleported from one place to another, and you know there were elements of where it was, you know, you felt there was kind of authentic, gritty photo documentary in there. There were parts that felt creepypasta to me, which I thought were really interesting. Okay, so for someone who's quite OCD,
Yeah.
when I look at that list,
Yeah.
that makes me think I need to click on every single link and experience everything that's in there.
Right.
Is it that I would start at anywhere and just by continuing to go through, you would get all through the world, or do you need to come in and out?
Right, so this main menu is basically set up so someone can enter at any environment. Just as you just said, if it's 71 minutes, you know, you might have to step away for a second. So this is so they can just enter right back from where they started. And as I said before, each title of this is kind of set up in a way that mimics this older website from the early 2000s, and this was the way you selected each record. So that's why I have that set up like that.
Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, there's something, you know, you've obviously been working on this for a long period of time. There's something about really exciting ways of engaging with music that are kind of developing, and I think, you know, in COVID, actually, the two industries that jumped furthest forward were music and fashion. We're also now at a point where MTV is effectively closing down. So, like, you know, what was a big momental place in the musical kind of landscape is going away. And with that, a lot of discussion about the relevance of the music video.
Right.
And part of me would say that it's not the music video that's become irrelevant. There's just been a lot of shite been made as music videos for a long period of time now. There's not been the, you know, you mentioned Michael Jackson. You know, the amount of, I mean, I remember staying up, I think it was till midnight to see Thriller on Channel 4.
Right.
And there's, you know, it's very rare to get that level of artistic intent these days. How do you see this fitting into a world where we've now got people performing in Fortnite versus against, you know, vinyl and cassette?
Sure.
Taking a good stronghold again now.
Sure. Yeah, I feel like this project represents that kind of true middle of all of the things you were just discussing. The fact that, you know, we live in a society right now where you could take someone of one age group, show them a true celebrity, and they'll go, who is that?
Yeah.
And then you can show someone of a different age group, someone from Twitch, and they'll say, who is this? I don't know who this person is.
Yeah.
And I feel like the reason why you even said you stayed up for Michael Jackson is because everybody grew up with Michael Jackson, but this Michael Jackson, this Thriller Michael Jackson, this bad Michael Jackson represents a evolution basically in how we process and connect with the music. And in this project, that's kind of what it's about. It's about understanding, like, well, why is that line relevant? You said yourself, going through things, certain environments were evoking certain feelings, but just as in music, how many times have we listened to a song and we're like, we'll have to rewind that. What is he even talking about? So this is a way of, as physically as you can, kind of being in these spaces and understanding what the artist sees. And that's why I say this album kind of represents the future of how we take in music, because yes, we've gone from a place where celebrities say no photos, no questions, to literal spend 24 hours with me because the label is like, we need to have more connection with the artist. So I feel like this is just the kind of next way of doing that and making it more meaningful than just a tech promotion, you know, visit this 360 environment. No, it's more than that. a way of actually bringing the user into my perspective, into the artist's perspective.
And so much, they can gain so much more from the context that you can give.
Exactly.
In addition to like replaying the lyrics, that still doesn't necessarily mean you understand what that person said when they wrote those lyrics.
Right.
Whereas in this type of environment, you can glean more of an understanding.
Yeah, I only look at it in the fact where there are certain songs, like one time I heard, there's like, I forget what Kanye West song it is, but he's like, we met at Borders. Me being from Chicago, I know the Border, like the store he's actually talking about, the place where he's talking about it, so I feel that if you actually bring a person to the store that the person is talking about, or the corner that someone's actually talking about, it can make you maybe resonate with it a little bit more.
Yeah. Amazing.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the audience? We've got two. If you can keep those two, if that's right.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Amazing work. How do you imagine people experiencing this? Is this just me in my room, having this sort of, in early 2000s rap experience listening to it individually? Or could you also imagine maybe more collective versions, like you do it in a dome like this, and we listen to the album together, and you do sort of a take-through? How do you see that?
Sure. So the one thing about Automotor is it was built, first off, the environments are presented in a website format to be app agnostic. Because when I was creating the project, it was at a time, like now we live in a time of 1 terabyte phones. Everybody probably has 1 terabyte phone, something like that. Back in the day, people had 16 gigabyte phones. You couldn't tell them, hey, you want to listen to my album? Delete all the apps you have and listen to my visual album. Like, no, nobody's going to do that. So that was the way I presented it. And another thing about the project is, although we went into 1 or 2 environments, the way that each environment is set up is very different. Some of them have different goals and are not meant to be presented in different ways, but can be presented in those ways. So just as you were saying, yes, we can have a dome experience for a couple of the songs and environments in this project, but then, it's also, it's something that is so personal that it's something like you should consume it or listen to it or, all that at your own speed and at your own pace. That's why there's a lot of additional information and corroborating information to the project, because it's basically like the Godfather box set or something of that nature, just right on your computer. So you can, wherever you feel, if you feel like watching it on your phone, you can, but then also because of the web nature of it, you can then put it on your iPad, you can use it on your laptop, smart TV, etc. So
amazing, thank you. And we had one more question.
Love your project.
Thank you.
How can you access it once IDFA is over? Can you find it online somewhere? Or?
Yes. So my project Automotor will be available through my site, which is vyle.com. So it's spelled VYLE 3 times with the .com. And you can find that and other interactive environments that I work on and create.
Great, thanks.
Sure, of course. Thank you both.
Thank you very much. So we're going to take the usual 5-minute